So finally, as I said, once we've identified in our organization how we wanted to go ahead with our implementation, we bring back the implementation consultant. And what implementation consultant will do, they have to start the implementation. Before starting the implementation, they will first check what are the licenses available for us, what are the modules or provisions for our organization based on your licenses procured. How do you see that? Basically, that is where you can see in the offerings tab. So basically, offerings is the one where you can able to see your licensing, right? So if you go to the navigator, there is something called what is it? Yeah. No. Yeah. So my enterprise basically. So my enterprise will have something called offerings and subscriptions. So if you go to that offerings, basically, it will show you. It's opening up. It will show you. These are all the offerings as part of the SaaS applications. If you click on the specific offering, basically, right? So what is an offering? So offering is basically it's basically it represents one or more business processes and sub processes. In other words, basically, what Oracle has done, Oracle has divided the whole SaaS modules into the offerings. Actually, every offering will have some SaaS modules. Example, if you have the financials example. In the financials, basically, they have two kinds of offerings. Basically, one is Fusion Financials, and there's another thing called Financials Accounting Hub. So it was not mentioned here. So basically, there are two. The reason is if the Fusion Financials, basically, they will cover the general ledger and AR, AP, expenses, everything. When I talk about Financial Accounting Hub, basically it actually covers about it's about general ledger, basically, where at the end of the day everything should come into the Financial Reporting Hub just for the reporting, basically. Similarly, if we talk about workforce deployment talks about some set of modules like global HR, time and labor, some set of modules basically. Out of those modules, which one we have a licensing? Again, it actually based on the offering. So let me show you that. It's still opening up. Why I'm not finding it here. Get that kind of look and feel. Don't worry about the navigation. I will tell you the shortest paths. That's fine. So let's go to setup and maintenance. We'll see from here. Yeah, I think it came here. See that? Basically, everything has offerings, and if the status, they will see the status basically what is enabled for us. Example, if you procure the global HR licensing, then typically they have to go to workforce deployment and check the status of it, whether it is enabled or not. If it is enabled, it means license is procured for our instance basically. If it is not enabled, then typically we have to contact Oracle and make them get enabled basically. That's what we need.
But just one question is, for as you just mentioned that we'll get only two environments, and one is production and second is test. To understand the offering, can we enable any of new functionality or any of the functionality on test instance and just check that?
Uh,
As most of time right now in EBS, if we want to understand a new feature in some of thing, like then we are enabling, and then if it's
Correct.
okay, then we are taking it,
Correct.
getting license from product for production. Yeah.
So here also we can enable it in test instance. That is not a problem. But there are some backend features may not work for you. So you could able to see the front end screens. Example, you don't have license to the time and labor, but still you can go ahead and enable the time and labor in the test instance, not in production instance. The audit they will catch in the audit. So in test instance, you can enable it, you can keep using it, but there are certain functionalities. Let us say if you want to call the backend services, in those cases, those functionalities may not work. But from front-end application user interface perspective, you can absolutely see all the roles, out of the box screens, everything you can see it. Only thing backend services, some of them may not work. So that is the only difference. And typically in test instance, you can able to enable it and then you can make it happen.
Yeah. Thank you.
No problem. And every module, basically, if you there is something called related documents here. The related documents, what Oracle will tell you in this specific offering, if you want to do the implementation, what are the steps we need to follow. They are going to provide a HTML format and PDF format, Excel format. So what are the all the features available in this offering, and what are the to implement any specific feature. What is a feature? Feature is nothing but example workforce deployment has a HR, payroll, time and labor, all those things, and each one is called a feature. If you want to implement a specific feature, then typically what are the list of tasks that need to be implemented? A task list. Task is nothing but set of tasks to be implemented. And what are all the business objects are being given as far as part of that product, right? Example, if you want to implement the HR, what are all the objects available as part of HR? Employee is an object, department is an object, location is an object. So every object is given here basically. And related enterprise application, what are the related applications are there along with this specific features in the workforce deployment. And you could every document, it has a whole documentation, and documentation is very much detailed, and it actually helps for any implementer to begin with basically. And each offering has also something called opt-in features. Opt-in features nothing but, as I said, this workforce deployment is set of things like a HR, payroll, time and labor, whatever it is, right? So let's do the PDF format. How does it look like? Where you could able to see the related enterprise application. This workforce deployment can work with the CRM, FA. If you want to access CRM application, it is how we need to access endpoint URI, financial application, FSM. These are all the things. It will have more information for everything. You could be able to go and see that. When you click on the opt-in features, as I said, payroll is enabled, absence enabled, time and labor is enabled. These are all enabled. Maybe for your licensing, some of them may not be enabled. And if someone is asking me if they want to enable it, yes, you can enable and test it. It's not a problem. So, but by default, if you don't have the specific licensing, it will be unchecked like this. You won't be having that specific licensing, right? But if you want to use the feature, you can use the feature, and absolutely you should do in the test instance only, because if you do in production instance, you'll be caught up with the auditing. Because no audit is basically no more on-premise, everything is in the cloud. They will immediately know that if you're using some other module, they could be able to send the alerts in the next week itself. And again, within the each thing, basically there are more features. Example, payroll is there. Payroll will have more features like US payroll and UK payroll, because it comes with some legislations. And do you want to enable that? Again, in the specific feature, you can check whatever is needed and whatever is not needed. So it is how it is being organized based on what licensing we take and based on what we are using. All these things are enabled. Typically, the implementation partner will just validate whatever the modules are licensed provision, and then they can it is then they're good enough to start with the implementation basically. Once they figure out all the necessary modules are available, then typically they can begin with the implementation. To begin with the implementation, typically they rely on one module called Functional Setup Manager and FSM, using which you can able to begin the any implementation. Actually, this FSM is a module where you could able to uh, 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 organize your implementation actually. So this FSM module tells you if you want to implement financials, it will provide the list of tasks, what needs to be implemented in which order. And also in this FSM module, you can able to assign this task has to perform by the specific user, this one has to perform this specific user. We can organize it, and we can keep track of the status, who is doing what task and where they are, how much percent they have completed, how much has to be completed yet. Everything is very much organized, very detailed actually. Okay, so what we do, we start with FSM tomorrow. So we'll